sounded really distorted.
It's like 80s, man.
It's like 80s distortion.
Yeah.
What's up,
We did
guys?
70s last episode with the fuzz, 60s and 70s. Now we just launched another decade.
Bringing the 80s back.
We're in the 80s. Well, sort of. So we're partially in the 80s, and then we're modern day distortion. But
Yeah.
today's theme is distortion pedals.
But more specifically,
The old-ish versus the newish.
yeah. And what's the deal? What's the difference? Are
Yeah.
they all just kind of the same, and they just keep
Has distortion
reboxing
evolved?
it?
Yeah.
Right. And what is distortion? Right.
What is coffee?
It's needed.
It's necessary.
Cheers.
Cheers. Subscribe while we're
Please.
sipping, please. Right over there. Subscribe. Cool. All right. So we got the Metalizer, which just in the name just screams 80s, right?
So I have quite a few stories about that particular pedal. But before we get into the stories,
Yeah.
right? So what was I know we've spoken about influences, we've spoken about hearing sounds, and
Yeah,
I think
yeah.
one of the episodes you talked about, hearing the distorted guitar and how that inspired you to
Yeah,
want to even
sure.
play,
Yep,
right?
yep.
So what is it about distortion? Why is that the main thing with guitar players?
Why is it the main? Well, amongst
rock guitar
rock
players.
guitar
Rock
players,
guitar
yeah.
players.
So for me, it's just like the expressiveness. I think I get more expression out of the instrument depending on the type or the not only the type of distortion, but how comfortable I am with the distorted sound.
Right.
I think you make a connection with the sound, and you can express what you're feeling more if you feel connected to the sound.
Sure.
And I feel like I connect more with a distorted sound.
Okay.
In
Fair
general.
Yeah.
Like I said, I know I mentioned in previous episodes that my aunt had a guitar. And it's funny because I had an aunt that played guitar on one side of the family, and I also recently mentioned my uncle that played guitar from the other side of the family. But when I went to my aunt's house, she had that old Ibanez guitar with that old crappy tube amp that I couldn't get distortion out of. But I knew that the sound I liked when I heard Ace Frehley playing, I heard distortion, but
Right.
that sound was not coming out of that amp. And then I found out later on, fuzz pedals and distortion pedals, and those are the things that really made that sound happen. This is really before, if you had a Marshall, you could put it on 10 and you'd probably get that sound too, but
Right.
we didn't have that. So in comes a distortion pedal, and going to music stores and realizing that that's what produced that sound. And once I realized that, then I realized that my love for guitar was reborn, because now I made the connection between that sound that Ace Frehley was making, or Eddie Van Halen, to bridge the gap between that sound and what I was hearing when I went to my aunt's house and
Exactly.
played through that little
Exactly.
tube.
And you were able to bring it home, so to
And
speak.
then all of a sudden, the distortion was
Yeah.
something that was attainable. And, for me, it's my favorite style of guitar is a distorted style. I still have a great appreciation for classical players and, acoustic guitar players.
Sure.
But that's not me.
Mhm.
I'm just the distortion
Straight
guy.
up rock.
I'm
Yeah.
a rock guy.
I am too, and for me it was funny. Similar story when I first started playing guitar. I had an amp. It was a PV Backstage Plus, a little
Sure,
tiny
yeah.
amp, and it had saturation. It was
Yep.
called, and that was
Yeah,
the gain.
yeah.
And I really didn't know what a distortion pedal was. At that time, then a friend comes along and he's got a distortion pedal, and I remember asking, like, "What is that?" Like,
Yeah.
what-
Yeah.
And it just sounded better to
Yeah.
me than the gain that was on the amp, because typically back then, early 80s or earlier, right, the gain that was available on an amp usually wasn't that great,
No.
and it usually wasn't that plentiful.
Oh, yeah, you needed
Right.
more.
You needed more. You needed an overdrive or some kind of distortion pedal
Sure.
in front, and that's where that was born. So once I discovered the distortion pedal, it was all about that.
Yeah.
It was all about that sound. And so interestingly, what we have here today, we have two pedals. One's from the 80s and one is current. One is an old Boss Digital Metalizer, the MZ2. Back in 1988, I walked into a guitar store. I was using a DoD American Metal pedal. That was my distortion pedal from about 1985 until about 1988. And it was in the case, and I think it was the colors, the red on black.
Yeah, it looks cool.
It
It looks metal.
And it said Metalizer,
Yeah.
and I was like, wow, this is really cool.
Yeah, yeah.
And this was in 1988, and I tried it out, and I loved it. And I bought it, and I think I'm going to say it was probably around 75 or 80 bucks at the time, which was A lot.
That was a lot because I can remember pedals back then being like $39.99 was
Right.
like the wheelhouse.
30 to
for
50.
Yeah, that was so yeah.
But Boss was sort of the top
Yep,
end.
the top
and
tier,
it was
sure.
somewhere in the $70 to $80 price, I think.
I'm trying to think of my first distortion pedal. I think it was an Ibanez.
An
It
Ibanez?
made like a super distortion.
Sure,
I think
yeah.
it was the Ibanez super distortion metal. It was
Yeah.
actually made out of metal. I liked
Right,
it.
right.
Yeah, it was.
That's
yeah.
cool.
And then, what mistake did everybody make when they first got pedals?
You put the distortion on 10.
Not only that, but you'd always have like you'd leave the input cable plugged in,
yes,
and you would
and then you blow
constantly
out the
go through
battery.
batteries and go,
Yeah.
why the hell? You know,
Yeah,
what's
yeah.
going on?
Yeah. So it was before the time of back then. You didn't have things like one spots, right? So you had an individual power adapter for every pedal,
Yep.
and it was cumbersome.
Yeah,
So if you
yeah.
went to a band practice or even a live show, you really used batteries.
Sure.
And you had to always make sure that fresh batteries in there,
Yeah.
the cables weren't left
Heck
in,
yeah.
and
You turn it on, and you'd see that LED would be a little dim.
dimmer
You'd
and
be
dimmer. You're like, oh no.
And that completely affects your tone.
Of course
right?
it does. Yeah, it would destroy it.
Yeah.
All right, so that's the Boss Digital Metalizer. Of course, this has been long out of print since the early 90s. I think they made it from around 88 to 91 or 92 or something like that. It's no longer available. You could get it on the used market, of course. One of the pedals that still retains your bottom end. So a lot of those distortion pedals, especially from the 80s, you turn them on, sucks all the bottom end out, and it's just very mid-rangey, and that's where all the distortion lives. This pedal doesn't do that. And this pedal also has some additional features. So it's an analog distortion with a digital chorus and doubling effect built into it.
Cool.
So it's sort of a hybrid pedal, which was way advanced for 1988.
Yeah, definitely.
So I always ran it flat. I only used it for the distortion sounds, but there's a stereo out, and you could, mess with sort of the, adding chorus, kind of like the Zakk Wylde thing. You always have a chorus on a sound.
Just subtle.
You can kind of do that with this pedal, and there's like a slapback delay and so forth. I always used it straight up. So we're looking at this one, and then we're looking at a Mooer Solo, which is, Mooer is a newer brand.
Yep.
They're compact pedals. The whole line is compact. They're inexpensive. They're half the price of what you would pay for a comparable.
Probably paying today what you paid for the Boss in 1988.
Or less.
Or less.
Depending on what model. They have a whole bunch of different distortions and overdrives, several. A lot of them are modeled after certain other pedals.
Sure.
But this has actually a pretty nice feature set. Not only do you have gain, you have a tone, which is usually a sweepable mid. You have a level control, which is your overall output volume. But you have a selector switch there where you have normal, what does it say? I can't even see from here. Normal, Titan, Classic, which is just the character of the distortion, right? Which is kind of cool. So we're going to look at the old versus the new, and, is it just the same thing repackaged, with slight tweaks? Because there's so many distortions on the market, and so many overdrives, and so many, even fuzz pedals, right, we talked about. There's thousands of them available now.
Yeah, they're everywhere.
Back in the 80s, there really wasn't. There was a handful of brands. You had Boss, you had MXR, and a few other small brands, Ibanez, and a few other small. That was it. You had probably less than 10, maybe. Yeah. Nowadays, there's thousands of overdrive and distortion pedals, and as a new player, and still now, it's almost daunting. What kind of distortion pedal do I want? What am I looking for?
Too many options.
Too many options. Are they the same, essentially? Is distortion, and I know there's different types of clipping. We can go into that. There's plenty of content on YouTube that goes into the type of clipping.
Yep.
But essentially, a straight up hard clip distortion, are they all basically the same, right? So that's the first question I have. And the second question is, how does the old hang with the new?
Yeah, always.
All right.
Let's check them out.
All right. So the first one we were playing through was the Metalizer, I believe, right?
Yep.
So this is the amp, right? It's a JCM 800, 20 watt Marshall. Little bit of grit. Right. Some distortion. Right away, you see the bottom end is still there. So if I just juice the tone a little bit, maybe give it a little bit more drive.
Sounds sounds great.
1988.
88. Yeah.
So, all right, so that's that. Let's hear this guy. All right, so right off the bat, it's noisier.
Yep.
There's a lot more noise, right? So listen to that versus this.
It's amazing. Wow.
Right? So there's a big difference. So what that tells me is that the Boss has much more attention to detail, probably higher quality componentry, probably why it's more expensive.
It's 88 technology from the 80s, you know? It's crazy. It's still
good. All right. So this one's a little bit noisier. Okay? Does it matter when you're playing? So what if we slow the drive a little bit?
Yeah, I was going to say, yeah, let's lower that.
Comparable amount of drive.
Yep.
So the noise is a little bit better.
Yeah, how's the level on the mower? Is it?
Looks like it's about straight up.
Let's hear the Boss again. Yeah.
Try it.
Yeah, I want to check that out. Gotta do 80s, you know? Metalizer. Try the other one. I gotta go current technology for feel. It just feels better under my fingers.
The
newer
Mooer
one? Mm-hmm. Yeah. I don't like to bust on the 80s because I love the 80s, but I think I'm digging on the Mooer at this point.
So that's in classic mode.
Okay. It is definitely noisier. So that's something we need to take into consideration. But, you know, again, like you said, does it matter when you're playing? It's so much quieter.
It's a big difference.
That's crazy. If you're playing some tight rhythm stuff, you may want to...
So, let me see. Does it make a difference if you change? No.
Nope.
Lower the gain a little bit more.
Still plenty of sustain, right? Feels good. Do you want the gain lower for you?
Yeah, put the gain lower. So, hold on. I think there's more individual note clarity with the Boss.
Yeah. Oh, I'm so on the fence with this one.
Yeah.
Because there's definitely more tonal quality, I think, out of the Boss. There's something more there's more character to the sound.
Right.
But there's a comfort level that I'm feeling with the Mooer that I'm not feeling with the Boss quite as much.
What if you put more gain up on
Yeah,
the
well,
Boss?
it's possible too. Well, that's over the top. Was that chorus? There's a little bit of. Yeah, it's there. You could definitely manipulate it to get that comfort factor going.
Right.
So in that respect, now I'm leaning more towards the Boss
the
because
Boss.
of its whole characteristics.
I got to tell you, I would. Yeah, I think they're both cool. They both do a similar thing. I think, right. The takeaway is the old still sounds pretty much the way the new sounds. Quality, I think the Boss still wins. Note clarity, definition, the Boss still wins.
Yeah.
But in terms of the type of distortion, just regular hard clip distortion, they sound kind of the same. Like the amount of distortion, the feel to me.
Yeah.
You know, I just kicked up the drive a little bit more on this. It looks like this Mooer has a lot more gain on tap.
Yep.
Right. But if you crank up the drive on the Boss, they feel similar.
Now, how's the noise on the Boss with the gain cranked up? Is that changes things a bit?
Changes things. Well, no.
Yeah.
When you volume down.
Yeah, my volume was up. So now let's try the Mooer again. Yeah, it's different.
And that's with the gain down on the Mooer.
Yeah.
If I.
Yeah. It's definitely,
Right.
You can't deny that.
So what's the verdict?
Oh, I'm split. Just because I'm a vintage kind of guy, maybe I'd have to go with the Boss.
Yeah.
But, still, the Mooer's great. Sounds cool, but tonal characteristic, just vintageness, have to go with the Boss.
Have to go with the Boss. Me too. I mean, I would take the Boss if I had to choose.
Yeah.
The Mooer, obviously, it's compact. It's pedal board friendly. And most people are using a noise suppressor anyway. We don't have one in the chain right now. But if you're using a noise suppressor, that extra little bit of hiss might not really be an issue for you.
Sure.
So it's just, do you want to go out and buy sort of a classic piece of gear, or spend half the money and buy something newer that maybe you need to have a noise suppressor, maybe not, depending on your playing style.
Sure.
But yeah, they're both cool. I would use them both.
Yeah,
right?
definitely.
But if I had to choose, Boss wins.
And comment. Let us know what you guys thought.
Right.
Because I'd be curious to hear that, right?
Right, and let us know if you want to see a full feature demo of this thing. Because, I just swept through the thing. If you use the stereo output, we can go through 2 amps.
Sure.
And you could really
we
hear
don't necessarily always have to compare two things. If you guys want us to focus on one thing in particular, we could do episodes that just specifically look more in depth into one particular over the other.
Give us your use case, right? If you wanted to hear it in a certain manner, or play through certain types of guitars, Strats versus humbucker equipped, or whatever, just let us know.
Let us know. Cool. All right. There you have it.
See you guys.
See you.